Hello everyone and welcome back. My name is Mr. Cobalt and today I am going to be going over types of formulas. There are several different types of formulas. I'm only going to go over three in this video. The first one is called the empirical formula, the second one is called the molecular formula, and the third one is called the structural formula. The empirical formula is the formula that gives the relative number of atoms of each element in a compound. And so let me step back and say, okay, what exactly is a formula? A formula is a way of showing what atoms of an element are involved in your substance, right? So if it's a compound, a molecule, ionic substance, you have to write a formula that's going to show what atoms are involved and how many of those atoms are involved, right? So there are a few different ways of writing that formula. And I said the first one is the empirical formula, and that's going to give the relative number of atoms in each for each element in your compound. So relative means with relation to the other, right? So what that means is it's going to be in the least whole number ratio. So for example, let's say, let's take water, for example. If I have water, no, not water. So yeah, let's take water, for example. Water has the formula H2O. Now, is this an empirical formula? Well, we look at the numbers of each one. So we have 2 hydrogen. So the subscript 2 tells us the number of that particular element, how many atoms of that element. And the subscript 2 comes after the element that it is referring to. So this subscript 2 is referring to the hydrogen. So this tells us that we have 2 hydrogens in our formula. Here we have an oxygen. This says that we have 1 oxygen in our formula. We don't write ones. The fact that we have the O there in our formula tells us that we have at least 1. If we had more than 1, then we would need a subscript. But if there's only 1, the O there is enough to suggest that. Okay, so we have 1 oxygen and 2 hydrogens in this formula. Is this an empirical formula? Yes. The reason is because 2 to 1 is the lowest whole number ratio. So the relative numbers of hydrogen to oxygen, the relationship is 2 to 1, right? So what if I compare this to hydrogen peroxide, H2O2, right? So here I have hydrogen peroxide, and so here I have 2 hydrogens in the formula, and I have 2 oxygens in the formula. So here the question is this an empirical formula? Well, the answer is a no, because if it is given in the relative numbers, the whole number ratio here is it's 2 to 2 in this formula, but the relative numbers, if we were to simplify this more, is 1 to 1. So if I wanted to write the empirical formula for hydrogen peroxide, I would write HO. So it's a 1 to 1 relationship. So that is the empirical formula for hydrogen peroxide. This is not the empirical formula. So water and hydrogen peroxide, these would be the empirical formulas. Now, what about the molecular formula? The molecular formula is similar to the empirical formula, except for this one difference. it gives the actual number, not the relative number. So here it's going to tell us exactly how many of each atom, how many atoms of each element are actually in the molecule itself. Okay, so here let's use water as an example. So water has the formula H2O, and in this case, this is the actual numbers of the hydrogen peroxide of water. So we have 2 hydrogens and we have 1 oxygen. Those are the actual numbers of hydrogen and oxygen in a water molecule, right? So this would actually be the actual molecular formula. So in this instance, the molecular formula and the empirical formula are the same. But for hydrogen peroxide, the actual formula is H2O2. So here, the actual formula for H2O, for hydrogen peroxide, is I have 2 hydrogens and 2 oxygens, and those are the actual numbers, right? So if I have a molecule of hydrogen peroxide, that molecule is going to have 2 hydrogens and 2 oxygens bonded together in that molecule. Okay, so so here the empirical formula of hydrogen peroxide and the actual formula are different. So sometimes they're the same, sometimes they're different. Okay, when we are talking about ionic substances, we always write down the ionic formula, the formula for the ionic substance, in the lowest whole number ratios. So all ionic substances are going to be written in the empirical formula. So for example, if I have sodium chloride, that is going to be NaCl. If I have magnesium chloride, that's going to be MgCl2. So this ionic substance has 2 chloride ions for every 1 magnesium ion. And this one has 1 chloride ion for every 1 sodium ion. So ionic substances always written in empirical formula. Never in molecular formulas because they are not molecules. They're not bonded together according to the sharing of the electrons. Okay? So I hope that is clear between the distinction between empirical and molecular formula. What about structural formulas? Structural formulas are formulas that actually show how the atoms are connected together. And they use lines to represent the covalent bonds. And if you remember from my previous video, covalent bonds are where the electrons are shared between the 2 atoms. And so we can represent that by a line. So if we go back to our water and our hydrogen peroxide, you'll see that water, if we write the structural formula for water, it will look like that. So we see that the covalent bonds between hydrogen and oxygen are written as lines, and you can see that the hydrogens are connected to the oxygen, right, directly to the oxygen. If we look at hydrogen peroxide, it would look like this. Okay, so here the structural formula of hydrogen peroxide is showing you that the 2 oxygens are bonded directly to each other. And you can see that the hydrogen, this hydrogen is bonded to this hydrogen is bonded to that oxygen. And so these are the structural formulas for these 2 compounds. Okay, I hope that was clear. I do have a joke for you. So it's apropos to what I'm discussing. So 2 people walk into a bar. The first guy asks the bartender, give me some H2O. And the second guy says, I'll have some H2O too. Second guy died. Get it? Okay, I'll let you think about it. All right, thanks for joining me. If you like this video, please share it with your friends. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, share the video again. Write a comment in the comment section about anything you want me to cover. Hit the notification bell if you want to receive notifications for any new videos that I put out. Thank you for joining me, and I will see you guys next time.